Israel is weaponizing humanitarian aid into Gaza in a genocide that has already killed at least 50,000 people and displaced millions. As famine looms and the bombs continue to fall, Britain is in court defending its decision to continue exporting weapons to Israel. One of the groups involved in the case against the British government is Oxfam. So today, we're going to speak with Oxfam's Gaza lead, Clemence Lagouardat, about her most recent trip to Gaza. She's going to tell us about the humanitarian situation there, how people are just barely surviving, and why Oxfam are involved in this case. Thank you very much for talking to us, the Morning Star, today. I know you're a bit pressed for time today, so thanks so much for giving us time today. Can you just start by telling us your role in Oxfam and what you do? And then we're going to talk about your recent trip to Gaza. But can you just tell us about your role first?
Yeah, so within Oxfam, I'm part of the emergency team. So I'm deployed upon the request of the country when there is a major humanitarian crisis. So I've been deployed to Gaza as what we call head of response, from November to end of April. My role there was to support the team, the different department, to basically make sure that we were able to do our work properly, deliver the assistance to the people in need. So it has a bit of a strategic aspect, relation, internally and externally to our donors, but also, pushing a bit on advocacy and raising awareness around the situation in Gaza.
And is your role always focused on Gaza, or does it just depend on the emergency?
Yeah, it depends on the emergency. So before going to Gaza, I was in Ukraine, for example.
Okay. Yeah. And so I don't know how recently you were in Gaza, but can you tell us, what did you see there? And I imagine it must have been pretty traumatic, but can you tell us about your recent trip?
Yeah, no, for sure. So my last, what we call rotation, has been 6 weeks, and I left on the 22nd of April. So I returned back to Gaza. It was already the full siege and blockade, meaning that nothing was entering. It was Ramadan. And then so basically week after week, as the blockade was continuing, I saw the situation worsening. And then on the 18th of March, Israel decided to unilaterally, stop the ceasefire. So we had, massive bombardment across the Gaza Strip, military operation on the ground, and a population that had to move again. I think as we are talking right now, we have more than 500,000 people that had to be displaced once again, while us as humanitarian worker, we do not have anything in stocks anymore. So we are struggling to provide the necessary level of support and assistance.
And whereabouts in Gaza did you go? Would you go to Gaza City? And I don't know, could you tell us where you went?
Yeah, so I think there is a major change between, up until the ceasefire, during the 45 days of the ceasefire, and after. So before the ceasefire, where we were able to go was extremely limited. So we were in Al-Mawasi, Rafah, and we had also an office in Deir el-Balah. We were working in the so-called humanitarian area. And then during the ceasefire, I had the opportunity of going basically in all the governorate in Gaza. There are 5 of them. So from Rafah in the south, to North Gaza governorate, able to cross also the infamous Netzarim corridor. And I think that was striking because these places seem so far away while we were under the full war. While ultimately the Gaza Strip is extremely small, but also picturing and seeing the scale of destruction. Like, you hear about it, you hear testimony, even when you're on the ground, but then when you start traveling, you just realize that it's for miles away. Like, it's continuous and it's everywhere. And then after the 18th of March, once again, the humanitarian access has shrunk significantly. Right now, as humanitarian worker, we can access basically 30% only of the Gaza Strip. The rest is, outside the boundaries. We need heavy coordination with the Israeli that kind of need to green light every trip. Then that it's quite difficult.
So what was your, you just mentioned the Israeli authorities, right? You have to tell them everything that you go. Can you tell us about what was the relationship like with them?
So directly as a single organization, Oxfam. We don't have direct link with them. We have the United Nations agency that are supporting in terms of access. So like kind of the movement are categorized in different, categories. So everything that is close to what they call the buffer zone. So basically the border of the strip, everything that is now under evacuation order, to basically, if there is a chance of having Israeli troops on the ground, we cannot go simply there. We need to submit a coordination request on the platform, and it needs to be green lighted. It can be green lighted, it can be not green lighted. And then we need to kind of jump into hoops. We need to take a certain road. It needs to be at certain hours. And it's extremely difficult to plan your work, with that. Otherwise we have what we call notification of movement. So that for the areas that the 30% of the territory, and here the system was down after the 18th of March. And it's now partially back up, meaning that as the humanitarian community, we are submitting where we want to go, but the Israelis are still not acknowledging. So we are letting them know, but they are not saying, we've received it, well noted, anymore, which was the case before. So yeah, in terms of safety, it's not great right now.
I mean, I want to ask you about what it was like for the Gazans, the people in Gaza themselves, but like, I just can't imagine going there and what it must have been like, because a lot of humanitarians, workers have been killed there, right? And lots of journalists, and mostly it's Palestinians being killed, obviously. But that must be really concerning, right? If you're telling them where you're going and they don't acknowledge, that must have been terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, but again, like the last critical incident that happened where on humanitarian premises, where the coordinates were shared, like they cannot say that they didn't know. So yeah, I think we can safely say that nowhere is safe in Gaza. And especially for our national team, for our colleagues, for the people from Gaza. It's, the risk of being a collateral damage, is just extremely high. If you have the wrong neighbor, like you are at risk. Most of our colleagues, when they're coming to work, they're basically not sure that they're going to find their family when they go back home, because there might be a chance that it had been bombed during the day. So it's extremely hard.
Yeah. And then, we just talked, I talked to your press officer before we start recording, and you've got teams there, right? Like Gazans that work with Oxfam that are in there as well. They must be under a constant state of stress and anxiety, I guess, right?
I think, and that's what we need to highlight. So as Oxfam, I mean, we are very few international staff. Most of the work is done by our national team, with our national partners. And all of them are victims of this conflict, right? They've been displaced several times. They are directly affected. However, they still continue to deliver on the ground, to go meet the communities, to be able to provide assistance. They are exhausted, for sure, but that also keeps them, going, is making sure that they can make a bit of a difference and alleviate a bit of the suffering.
Yeah, I think it's incredible that you managed to go, but also the people there that are living there every day, and they still manage to do that. It's just, I'm in awe of it. I'm lost for words. So can you tell us kind of what was like day-to-day life for people there? What did you see? How were they living?
I think, since the 18th of March, it's extremely hard. People have been displaced. Again, I mean, when we talk about displacement, so it's forced displacement, it's people that have very, very short amount of hours to basically leave their home and to find another place to stay. They are not allowed to leave most of the time with vehicle, meaning that they can only take what they can carry. We need to bear in mind that half of the population in Gaza are children. The family are like, have a lot of members. So you just like imagine you just wake up and you're basically told that in a few hours you need to move. You don't know where you need to go. You don't know what you will find where you go there, and you cannot carry much. And anyway, you don't have much to carry because you've been displaced already. The markets are closed. Things are expensive. So the level of despair and the level of of energy that it requires to just start again and trying to understand where you can live, to understand where you will have access to water, to see what kind of organization are around to be able to access food. And I think people, well, it's not, I think people don't have this energy anymore. Like I think we are entering the 19th month of war. Like people have exhausted their coping strategy. They don't have resources left. They don't have energy left. But still the situation is getting worse by the day.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I can't imagine like being told to leave and you walk and where are you going to go? Like, and there's like you said, half the population is under 18. Is that right? Mad. And, I remember seeing at the time, like during the ceasefire, were you there? You went there, right? At that part, seeing pictures of people returning to their homes, but it was just like, I don't know how you could describe it at home, but it was just total rubble, right? And did you see that? Like how did people seem at that point?
I think there was really just after the ceasefire and when movement from the south of the strip to the north were allowed, we've seen these massive returns, right? And then there was optimism and there was joy of people finally being able to go back home. What we've seen quickly after that is these hopes being crushed because I think people didn't realize what was the level of destruction. Like I remember colleagues going to Gaza City and coming back south saying like, Gaza City is gone. Like there is nothing left. We don't recognize like having team and people having difficulty navigating the neighborhood where they spend their entire lives because basically everything was wiped down and not being able to recognize like maybe that's my house, but I'm not sure. Like it's a pile of rubble and the neighbor house is a pile of rubble and the mosque has been destroyed. So yeah, I think there was optimism and hope, but they quickly realized that it was going to take years to rebuild. Basic services are gone because infrastructure have been systematically destroyed. And now this seems even further away because the few things that were still standing, the few infrastructure that were still standing are now again being bombed and people are now again being displaced. But I have testimony of members of my team, of people that I met on the ground that are saying this time we will not move again. We don't want to go back south. We did this mistake in the past. It's done. We don't have the energy. We don't if we need to die, we're going to die in our home.
That is incredible. Yeah, I can't imagine that having to think that thought. Like that is crazy. And can you tell us a bit about the aid situation when you were there and compared to now? Because I know there's the blockade that's been going on for quite a while now. Nothing is getting in by the sounds of it. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and when we say nothing is really nothing, and I think people have difficulty wrapping their head around that. It's not a single box of humanitarian assistance has entered since the 2nd of March. We have 2.2 million people that are completely dependent on the humanitarian assistance. Yes, there was a surge of goods entering during the ceasefire, 45 days, but that's not enough. And that doesn't cover 4 months of nothing entering. So for example, as Oxfam, by the end of April, even a bit before that, we had nothing left in our stocks. Critical places have closed, so all the bakeries are gone. There is no more flour. One of the last lifeline that was remaining was what we call tekia, which are the community kitchen. Those are closing down also. A few weeks back, they were distributing more than 1.1 million meals per day. For most of the population in Gaza, it was the only hot meal they could access. Now we are down to 400,000 and it's going to keep on going, lower and lower because again, nothing is entering. Cooking gas is long gone. So now you need to rely on wood, or wood is also getting expensive. So people are just basically collecting and burning trash. So even if you manage to find food, then cooking it and making it ready is another hustle. Hospitals have been systematically targeted. They are also running out of medicine and especially when you put that in terms of the number of incidents that provoke mass casualties, like basically doctors as most of the humanitarian worker, we are not able to do our jobs anymore because all the inputs, everything that we need to do with our job properly is not entering. I mean, water access is also reducing by the day. I mean, as fuel has not entered, I mean, there is going to be a point of time where there will be no fuel. When there is no fuel, it means, I mean, as Gaza doesn't have electricity, they have a few solar panels that have also been targeted. So when there is no fuel, it means generator will not be able to run, which means that, I mean, babies in like premature babies will not have access to oxygen anymore. Like everyone who is on oxygen support, it will close, it will disappear. Already, like most of the ambulance are not able to move anymore because they don't have access to fuel. But water production will be also affected. So people will not have food. They will not have water. They will not have access to health. Basically, you leave them to die. And we've been raising as a humanitarian community the alarm for many weeks now, saying like, it's not when people will start dying of starvation that it will be the moment to act. It needs to be prevented. Like malnutrition is slow onset, but when it starts being there, and if things continue of not entering, then it's just going to increase and increase and increase more. And we are seeing that already. But it seems that it takes that for the world to start reacting. It takes a collective punishment of an entire population and of people literally and actually dying of a preventable hunger for people to start speaking up.
Yeah, it just sounds like apocalyptic, what you're describing there. It's just unreal. And yeah, you just mentioned water there, and I think Oxfam has been campaigning for water, right? Can you? I think at the beginning of the war, Israel cut off the water, or they were at least talking about it. Like, what's the water situation like? And can people drink anything?
So there are several things that we need to know about the access to water in Gaza. Is that it's extremely close to the sea. There has been issue in Palestine and Israel about over pumping water, which makes it saline. The water, as it is, as you can find it in the Gaza Strip, is extremely saline, which is bad in taste, but it's actually improper for human consumption. So it needs to be treated by what we call desalination unit. These desalination units have been impacted, targeted across the Gaza Strip. The last big one that was operating had, I think it was the last remaining electricity line linking Gaza to Israel. They cut that recently. So now it only works on generator and solar panels. So it lost a lot of capacity. There are also 3 pipelines that are bringing water from Israel to Gaza. Currently 2 of them, so 2 out of 3 are done, have been damaged, and coordinated movement to access them and to repair are being constantly denied. So basically people are not getting the number of liters they should be getting per day, and which leads of them having to make extremely difficult choice. Like, do I use the very few water that I've been able to collect it? Do I use it for drinking? Do I use it for cooking? Do I use it for cleaning myself, for cleaning my clothes, for my ablution? And that creates a lot of issue. It creates a lot of public health issue. People that drink water that is not proper, it makes them sick. It's particularly dangerous for children under 5 years old. It is a cause of malnutrition. When you know that people already don't have access to proper food, they are at risk of also being sick, and which will, I mean, worsen their condition fast. There is basically a public health ticking bomb in the Gaza Strip, because on top of that, you have sewage spilling everywhere because they've been destroyed. Because, for example, as Oxfam, we've been trying to bring pipes and water equipment and sewage equipment for months now. They are sitting in Jordan. We never got the approval, and these are extremely needed for repairing the networks. So yeah, we have sewage, we have improper water, we have solid waste that are accumulating. And basically, yeah, it's a ticking bomb in terms of public health. And we could see epidemics breaking, anytime now, especially knowing that the temperature are increasing.
What do you mentioned the water stuff? Sorry, what did you say it was? The water, was it water pipes?
Yeah.
They're in Jordan. Like, what's the excuse that you've been given? Like, the reasons that you're not allowed to take them there?
So there is something called dual use items. So things that could be used not only for humanitarian purposes, but potentially military purposes. We don't have a clear list. It's not there. And it's a cause for refusal from Israel of bringing those items in. Like, what we need to know is that the entire board, like Israel has control on the borders of the Gaza Strip. So they are the ones saying yes or no for what type of assistance is coming in. We got one truck. It got all the clearance. It was rejected at the border. And then the second try was supposed to be on the 2nd of March, where they decided to close everything. So yeah,
it's great. Like, I always find it hard to imagine how, like, Gaza is supposed to be a separate country, but it's been occupied and blockaded for a very long time. And just the idea of another country having that power over yours, it is wild. I keep saying these stupid words, so I just can't think of the right way to describe it. And so I think we could talk about the situation there for a long time. But I think in the interest of time, we should move on to kind of responses in the West. So you're here at the moment in the UK as part of this case that's happening. Can you tell us what that's about as much as you can? Obviously, I don't want to ruin the case or anything, but yeah, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, no, for sure. So there is a case right now in front of the High Court of Justice to ask for the UK government to stop selling weapons to Israel. There was a decision taken by the UK government, I think last September, saying that they will not sell anymore a spare part of the F-35. So it's a jet that is carrying very large bombs. And basically the UK is manufacturing 50% of the spare part. So the government is suspending the direct sale of those spare parts to Israel. However, not the indirect one. So it's kind of a half decision that was taken. And right now, the case in front of the court is to try to say to the government that there are policies, there are international humanitarian law, there are human rights that needs to be respected, that therefore all arms sales to Israel needs to be stopped. As Oxfam, we are witness to the case, so we are providing evidence from the field, from the ground, on the humanitarian impact of the war that Israel is waging on Gaza right now. So we are showcasing how Israel has led a war on water, has used starvation as a weapon of war, has endangered the humanitarian workers, among other things. So I'm here to kind of testify, use kind of this momentum to keep on raising awareness on the situation in Gaza. And I think it is extremely important, but also because, very, very, very shortly, we're going to reach a point of no return where it will be too late. So, yeah.
And the US government has talked about, I think Israel has also talked about just removing people from Gaza, which is, I just can't wrap my head around the criminality of that. And they were also talking about getting private companies to come in and run aid instead of humanitarian organizations. I think this is pretty obvious why this is a bad idea. But can you tell us and also explain why this is a bad idea?
Yeah, no, for sure. There are several elements to it. First of all, as humanitarian organization, we have years, if not decades of experience, working in difficult situations, difficult contexts. We have lesson learned. We have improved. We know how to do our job and to making sure that the assistance goes to who is in need, and properly and in a dignified way. We are also not there for profit. So, bringing private companies is extremely dangerous, because first of all, they don't know how to do that. They don't have these years and decades of experience. It's an instrumentalization of aid, while aid is a responsibility of the state. Like, it should support the population in need. as humanitarian organization, we are also obeying humanitarian, what we call principles that are here for a reason, to make sure that humanitarian assistance is not instrumentalized, it's not used in favor of one party or the other, that it's not used to move population, that it has the humanitarian imperative of bringing support to those in need. So what we're seeing on the plan is a recipe for a disaster. First of all, right now, in terms of number of this private company, they are talking only about half of the population in Gaza being served with humanitarian assistance. They are talking about people having to move to collect the assistance. So what's happening with, I don't know, pregnant women, people with disability, children? Like, there are a lot of unoccupied children in the Gaza Strip because of the scale of devastation and death. How would these people travel kilometers on roads that don't exist anymore to get, I think, a 20-kilo box? Like, it's ridiculous. And it's dangerous. Like, the population in Gaza is pushed to so much despair that people might be willing to take risks to get the assistance. But it also trying to forcibly displace the population in Gaza, because if you don't have assistance where the people are, like, you're creating a pull factor, which is something that we are always, as humanitarian and principal humanitarian organization, always very careful about. And altogether, it has a political agenda, and which we don't have as a humanitarian organization. So it's extremely risky. And at the end of the day, it's risky, and it's endangering the life of the people in Gaza.
And it's also like an accountability, like private companies aren't under the same sort of accountability things, right? It's just crazy. And like, I don't know, like in the UK, we have private companies in control of our water, and that's a complete mess now. And I just can't imagine what that would be like in Gaza. And
also, I think, like, how it's described in this plan, that the humanitarian assistance has been reduced to a few non-food items and food. We are doing way more than that. So what about access to healthcare? What about access to water, sanitation and hygiene? What about access to protection activities? We have a population that face many traumas for more than 18 months. We have children that are unaccompanied. Like, what about these activities? Who is going to do that? So it's extremely reducing what we are doing as humanitarian organization to basically only survival for the people in Gaza. For how long? Like, you cannot have people dependent on food parcels for even months and months. That's not dignified. That's not a solution. That's not proper.
Can you talk about Oxfam's, what do they want from from British government, I suppose, essentially, and from other governments involved, Western ones?
I mean, right now from the UK government, we want them to stop. We want the Western government to apply pressure to demand a permanent ceasefire. It is needed now more than ever. We also want them to apply political pressure so that the blockade ends and that there is a free flow of humanitarian assistance in Gaza. That we will not be counting trucks, but making sure that what comes in is actually fit for purpose, relevant, and helps the people in Gaza. And we are basically asking also for accountability. Like, everything that has happened for the past 18 months, it has not been unseen. It is documented. It is out there. There is a need of accountability for the people and for the perpetrators.
Hopefully that happens. I'm a little skeptical, but I hope that happens. Do you have, I mean, it's probably difficult to say, but do you have plans to go back? You probably can't even get in, but like, and can you say, how is it actually working for Oxfam at the moment with your teams? Like, it must be difficult to be in touch with your colleagues there.
So we have a national team in Gaza of 36 people, colleagues that are between the south and the north. And currently we do have 2 international staff that are helping, including my replacement. Myself, I will not be going back to Gaza shortly. Someone took over. So we are trying to maintain an international presence to support our colleagues in Gaza that are very, very tired and exhausted. But it's becoming increasingly difficult. There are more and more restriction and impediments for the organization on the ground to bring international people that also serve as witness, right? I'm here and I'm I'm testifying of what I've seen in the ground, because my colleagues in Gaza cannot leave like right now. So So I think they're also trying, as foreign journalists have not been able to enter since the beginning of the war. So limiting the number of international and external eyes on the ground.
And a lot of journalists there are being killed as well, right? It's just really tragic, obviously. Clemence Lagouardat, thank you very, very much for talking to us. And I don't really know what to say. That was really, really informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.